Hello everyone! In case you missed it, this is the Too Long Didn't Read, where I share a roundup of everything happening in our Flow ecosystem. My name is Carol and I'm your friendly neighborhood community manager here at Flow. Let's just jump in. Emerald City Academy Bootcamp is now live and free. Learn everything about the Flow blockchain and cadence. No prerequisites required, not even a coding background. The best part? Once you complete the course, you'll be awarded with the first ever float, a Flow Proof of Attendance NFT. Emerald City was the first DAO launched on Flow, founded in October 2021. Since launching, Emerald City has evolved, now composed of 3 guilds, one for education, building, and governance. Floaty launched early February, and their team of passionate Flow NFT collectors are ready to connect borrowers and lenders with their peer-to-peer lending marketplace. Their team connected with us to share about all things Floaty, so head over to the Flow blog to learn more about their innovative approach to bringing the financialization of NFTs to reality. Do you have a racing time ride waiting in your garage? Ready to hit the streets? Beta 2.0 is now live for everyone to check out on iOS and Android devices. Whether you're a longtime fan or new to the driver's seat, download the latest version of this made with Unity game. Flunks is an upcoming PFP project where you want to make sure you catch the bus and get back to the heyday of high schools without any of the homework. The Flunks team just announced their launch plans with 9,999 Flunks being minted at $250 USD. Check out their syllabus to learn more as we get closer to the mint dates, March 26th for their whitelist and March 28th for their general public sale. The UFC Strike and NFL all-day marketplaces are now open, where you can buy and sell moments from your favorite fighters, players, and teams. Have your eye on a particular moment, or did you miss one from a pack sale or drop? Now you can search for it on the UFC Strike and NFL all-day marketplaces. And last but certainly not least, we want to give a huge congratulations to Fantastic Swap on being pioneers in the NFT space as they celebrate their 3-year anniversary. If you're a football fan, check out their amazing collectible platform featuring Real Madrid, Arsenal, and more. That's all I got, folks. Don't forget to tune in to our office hours on Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern, where we join the Flow teams for AMAs, updates, and more. Until then, see you at the next TLDR. Bye. Hello everyone! In case you missed it, this is the Too
This We're good to go. We're live. We're good to go. We're live.
Cool. I'm hearing some echoes.
Me too.
Oh, okay, awesome. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's office hours. Hope everyone's doing okay and most of all is safe. Andrea, I'm a developer advocate on the Flow team, and office hours is just a time we all get together and discuss all things Flow as a community. So from now on, it's going to be on Tuesdays at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And yeah, if you're watching from Twitch, Twitter, or YouTube, you should join on Discord to be able to participate in the chat, to be able to participate in the discussion, and also be part of the breakout rooms, which are dedicated voice channels for specific topics like cadence and FCL. Before we start, I just want to introduce the Flow team real quick. So let's go through the wonderful Flow team. So we have Kim and Bruno, also dev advocates on the team. We have Carol and Trey, the community awesome managers who are making Discord a wonderful place and the forums as well. Then we have Cadence experts, Josh and Bastian. I know that both of them are, I think, out of office today, but there's Satyam filling in, and we should probably make sure that we get Satyam's info on here as well. Then we have Greg, Chase, and James as the FCL wizards and engineers behind them. James, I think, is the original creator of FCL as well. And Max, Gregor, and Yanez as just SDK engineers, although they work more or less across the board as well. Then we have Srinjoy, Mac, Pete, and Morton on the developer experience side, so building out all the tools that we use as developers building on Flow. And we have Albert, who's focused on solution engineering, so working with partners, and David from marketing, product marketing specifically. And like I always mention, this is a FigJam board. It's going to be available to everyone after the office hours. So if you missed a name and you want to know who you want to reach out to, you can always consult this board and just hit them up on Discord. Cool. So let's go through the agenda. Today's is a little light, but that's also good because we have a couple topics that may take up a lot of discussion and spur some interesting just community discussion. So the main topic on the agenda is to discuss the HTTP API update, which Srinjoy will kind of cover. And then instead of the breakout room, we were thinking of discussing, kind of having a brainstorming session around the dev tools. So getting your feedback, maybe discussing what things are missing, what things could be improved, just a general forum where we can discuss all things tooling regarding building on Flow. And we plan on doing these more or less, like for example, every month. So dedicating one of the office hours specifically just to brainstorming tooling feedback. And maybe we'll have different brainstorms on different topics. And just as a community kind of get together and see how we can improve things. Cool. All right. And as always, you can ask questions on the Slido. In this case, it's bit.ly/OH-Feb24. I believe it might be, it's probably case sensitive, but it's probably also going to be posted in the text chat. So keep track of the text chat if you want to click on the links and if you want to ask questions. Awesome. Then without further ado, I think we can get started. Srinjoy, do you want to take it away and talk about the HTTP API update?
Yeah, for sure. Can you guys hear me? Oh, I think it just...
We hear you.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, cool. I think everything else just cut out. Anyway, so just a very quick update on the HTTP API. We released it on mainnet about a week or so ago, and a lot of the things have been fixed up, and I've put a blog post up about it. If you'd like to try it out locally on testnet, mainnet, or use it with FCL, there's some instructions on how to do that. I'll post the link in the office hours. And if you guys have any questions or want to dive into more discussion about that, we have Gregor on the call, I believe, or will be joining soon, and he'll be able to answer any more specific technical questions you guys might have.
Yeah, Gregor mentioned he had a little emergency, so he'll be slightly late. But yeah, in the meantime, maybe something that people may be wondering about the HTTP API. Is it at a point where people can start using it in production, or is it worth just keeping on the dev side for now?
Yeah, so it's actually been a cross-team effort to make sure it's available in all environments. So initially we rolled it out on testnet, but now it is also available on the CLI via the emulator, and also on mainnet. So it should be all good to go and ready for production use.
Awesome.
I'm here, by the way.
Oh, hey. Are there any questions on the HTTP API?
I got a quick question right here. So the script, when for example the type is set byte for the string, so it's an hexadecimal encodation of the string. For example, for sending a script.
Gregor, would you be able to answer that one?
I wasn't able to hear some of the question.
Leo, do you mind repeating the question? I think you cut out midway through.
Okay, do you hear me better now?
Yep.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so for example, for the script on the post method,
You're cutting out again.
With the script, so in the body with the key script. Also, sorry, I think that my connection is not good. I'm going to post the question on the. I'm going to
Awesome.
Write it down.
Yeah, feel free to just post it on the text chat if you can't find the Slido. Yeah, as soon as you write it, we'll answer it. In the meantime, does anyone else have any questions on the HTTP API?
Hey, it's Albert. How's it going?
Hey, Albert.
I actually had a question. Just at a really high level, is there like sort of parity with like, SDKs? I mean, obviously it's not an SDK, but are there any just high level limitations with it, things to call out just right off the bat?
Yeah, so currently there's a good parity between gRPC and HTTP API. You can, I would say, do everything with the HTTP API, if not more, comparing to gRPC. Whereas the SDK support is currently not great, FCL being the only one supporting it. And I'm hoping we can implement Go SDK support as soon as possible, but at the same time, I've also reached out to the community maintained SDKs, and hopefully there will be some support from that in the future. But just speaking on the functionality of the API, they are both the same, if maybe not even the HTTP is a bit better in what you can do with it.
Thanks so much.
So the next question on the board, I'm not sure if anyone from the FCL team is, yeah, I think James is here. I'm not sure if Jeff, but maybe they're better suited to answer that.
Yeah, I can answer it. So we've been working on it. The current alpha includes the mechanism where you get to pick. We're actually still going about this, but it's looking like there will be a breaking change, but we've tried to make it as like simple and easy as possible. So the transport with like what we're calling how we talk to the access node will be basically you'll need to pick between gRPC, which is how it works right now, and the HTTP stuff. As a user of FCL, you probably won't notice much difference. We've thought a lot about errors and stuff like that, so your errors might be a little bit cleaner and easier to understand. The other big difference you'll see with FCL is it cuts a substantial amount of weight out of FCL. I think it's like 80%. The FCL using the HPP stuff is like 80% smaller than FCL with gRPC stuff. But yeah, so in the alpha will also like it'll, when you upgrade, it will tell you, hey, you need to do this, and it should give you instructions on how to make your decision. The other note there is it uses a different access node URL. So you if I recall, yeah.
So for the other question about increase access to flow across all environments, offer better error handling, smaller payload sizes. Can you share data? I don't have the data, but I have some like elaboration on those points. So, for example, the better error handling is touching on the topic of there will be a new feature, or let's call it a feature, coming out really shortly, where we will provide better error responses for transactions. And so right now it's not as explicit as maybe it should be when adds the status of the transaction on the network. So, for example, when you send a transaction that and you have an intention for that transaction, what it should do, the success, in a sense that whether that transaction did what you meant to do, is not really explicit. You basically need to check for presence of an error message and combined with the transaction status, which is status whether it's sealed or finalized or pending or expired. And that's not great. So the HTTP API will offer another field where it will be, I think we kind of agreed that it will be called success result, and it will have two values, actually three, which is pending and successful or failed. So that will offer a better and more explicit error handling of transactions. There might be other places that it will be improved like that. About smaller payload sizes, that is actually in regards of ability for you to actually specify what subset of response you want to get back. So you have this notion of expand and exclude query parameters, where you can say, okay, I just need block header, not the whole block data. And in that way, you can maybe optimize what you get back in the response and potentially have a smaller response sizes. Or in some cases, you can even include another sub-resource for which currently you would have to make another gRPC request. So, and there's more, and this is meant to be more of a teaser. So I'm excited for all the features that we can hopefully release as soon as possible, and make you excited about this API. Okay, so this for the next question. When type is byte, and yeah, by the way, there's documentation on the REST API and of the HTTP API on our docs, where all the fields and endpoints are documented. So let me try to answer the next one.
And
type is sorry.
Gregor, sorry, just for context, this is Leo Brazil's question.
Oh yeah. So when the type is byte, string byte, I'm assuming we are talking about JavaScript here. Or for example, for sending scripts with post method, it means need to convert to the cadence string script into an hex string. So basically, you need to be careful with that, and so there are fields that require base 64 encoding. Script body, like script contents, cadence script contents is one of those. And of course, you need to also be careful how you're converting the string to the. So you don't need to hex encode the string, but you need to base 64 encode the string. And you also have to be careful about, so for example, in JavaScript, how you convert the string to a byte buffer to not have some problems there. If there are some like specific problems you have with that, I would you can write me on Discord directly, and I will guide you or help you with even share your code. So we are not too specific in this session about a problem, but hopefully that helps.
Leo, I've passed into the you've already liked it into the office hours. I've passed in a code snippet from when I was playing around with it. So you have to base 64. That's the B2A. So this would only work in the browser. The code snippet I gave would only work in the browser. B2A takes a string and changes it into base 64. So when I was playing around with it, I found I was having to base 64 encode the string as well as each individual argument.
Yeah, arguments are also required to be base 64 encoded.
But the script I just pasted in there, I believe, actually works or did work not that long ago.
Yeah, that looks okay. And yeah, if there are any problems, just reach out to us on Discord. But I believe that it's also written in the docs that you need to which parameters you need to base 64 encode. I'll just double check after this call, but I believe we did that. Okay, so next question or.
Sorry. Also, the result we get back, I believe, is base 64 encoded. So we have to convert it from the base 64 encoding into JSON, and then you can see it in my script.
Yeah, that's true. Can we take a look at the questions?
Yeah, the next question is, when will FCL be ESM friendly? Bundlers keep breaking. We need to use a community maintained lib, Samatech on Flow FCL ESM.
We are actually going through the process of reassessing all the different build tools and how all that's how things are bundled up. So there's been some really good community work as well on like TypeScript stuff. So we're definitely taking all of that into account. So soon. I'm never one that'll give you like dates or anything like that, but it is something that we are definitely looking at and thinking about.
Cool. And shout out to Lagit for spearheading that TypeScript effort, which he talked about last week. Cool. Then before we go into the brainstorming, we have one last question. Again, feel free to add other questions here. But the last question that we have on the board is, what's Flow's take on the OpenSea exploit over the weekend? Pete, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I can take that one. So the OpenSea exploit, as I understand it, was a phishing attack where OpenSea users got a fake email from someone impersonating OpenSea. I think it was about taking action to migrate NFT assets to their new contract. And then in reality, what they were tricked into doing was signing an off-chain message that could actually be used to transfer their NFTs to the attacker's address. And I've been following kind of the discussions that are happening on Twitter and in the Ethereum community about this. And there are lots of calls to make better use of EIP 712, which is an Ethereum standard for structured data for off-chain messages. So if you don't know what that looks like, if you're using an Ethereum wallet like MetaMask, it's very clear when you're signing a transaction, and that's one way to move assets. But you can also sign an arbitrary message that's then consumed by a smart contract, and that signature can be checked in the smart contract. And then depending on that smart contract's logic, it can move assets on your behalf, or in the case of OpenSea, I think that's how they facilitate orders, right? The problem with those arbitrary messages is it's hard to know what you're signing, right? And my understanding is the attacker took advantage of some of that obscurity, and you know, just like any phishing attack, the users thought they were doing something legitimate. Turns out they weren't. That's something we've thought about in the design of both Flow and FCL and in our guidance to wallets. But to prevent phishing in any case, it's very important to give the user what they need to verify the action they're taking. There's also elements of user education, right? Not instructing users not to sign messages they don't trust or transactions they don't trust. But we also recognize that when you're signing a blob of Cadence code, it's hard for the average end user who hasn't spent time learning Cadence to know what's going on. Something we're a big fan of is work that Blockto's done to put together we've been calling it human readable transactions, but you'll notice that some Blockto transactions or some transactions that show up in your Blockto wallet, when you sign them, rather than seeing a block of Cadence code, you'll actually see a nice description of what that transaction's doing, and that's because the Blockto team has looked at that transaction and that was submitted by the project, and they were able to tell you, like, in sort of plain language, what's happening. And we think like things like that are very important to bring blockchain applications to mainstream audiences, and we want to lean in more on that and help other wallets do similar things. And then, but that's just for transactions. For off-chain messages, we have been thinking about looking at similar improvements. But at the end of the day, it's really just serving as a reminder that as blockchain becomes more accessible, blockchain apps become more accessible to more mainstream users, it's very important to give them to make it as safe as possible, and understand that complex byte messages aren't something we can expect users to understand. But yeah, I think it was an unfortunate attack, and I think likely the attacker took advantage of the fact that OpenSea was migrating contracts. But from what I saw, there was nothing. It all happened outside of the OpenSea website on an impersonation site.
Hey, Kim, you want to chime in? I think Kim and I talked about some more high-level stuff because I was trying to understand it as well.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think another big thing was just user security. From my knowledge, they send out emails regularly that includes clicking links in the email, which I think attributes to like a lot of people who actually clicked into the email itself. So I think just having basic solutions such as like, hey, you have a secure message and log in onto the platform to read it. And I think that there were safer ways to do that. And because they did that as a process by including links, it's like an easy situation for phishers to copy that as well. So I think that's also included as a factor.
Yeah, that's interesting. Email is unfortunately spoofable, and I don't actually know what email address the attacker used.
They
They
spoofed
could
the
have
email.
made it look like an OpenSea address,
Yeah.
but um, yeah, the idea of having like, um, I wonder if there's a way to use the blockchain itself to send secure messages like that to users, right? Or have some sort of um, cryptographic proof that it came from OpenSea. Uh, yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, definitely, I think like email is a classic phishing vector, right?
Hmm. And they also they got users used to doing that as well. So
Right.
yeah, it's just a process. I think that also confused users.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Awesome. Thanks for both your inputs. Really like that idea that Blockto is working on, those human readable transactions. It reminds me of, for example, all those login with Facebook, login with Google, that when you do approve, it shows you an interstitial that kind of recaps what you're giving access to, right? In a pretty easy to parse way. So that's definitely something that users not comfortable with Cadence will definitely benefit from. So, Pete, do you know if there's any way for dApp developers to kind of work with Blockto to get those created? Maybe we can all like that would also help them not have to do everything themselves.
Yeah, I can answer that. There's a GitHub repo. You just do a PR. You can get your transactions in there. Where is it? I had this link the other day. I'll post the link in the office hours chat.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, it's also worth noting, this is a bit technical, but the users who were phished in the OpenSea exploit, they didn't sign a transaction. They signed a message that was consumed by a contract. And that's a pattern that's been more common on Ethereum than Flow so far. I don't want to speak for every contract, but most of the applications I've seen that developers deployed on Flow strictly do use transactions to move assets. There are interesting use cases and powerful use cases that are opened up by having sort of off-chain messages be verified inside a contract. But one thing worth noting is that in Flow, the signature mechanism for transactions has a specific transaction domain tag or a domain separation tag. And wallets are aware of that, which means when you and then although you can sign user messages in, via FCL wallets, those messages are always prepended with a different user domain tag. So that's one security element that's in place to make sure that an off-chain message can't secretly be a transaction, because transactions are always the wallet will always know to add that separate tag. I'm not saying that prevents this exploit. There still could be contracts that accept user-generated signatures, but as we get more and more into those use cases, we'll be thinking a lot about how to do it in a secure way, how to give the user as much information about what they're signing as we possibly can. And that's something we look forward to working with all of you on, actually.
Cool. So I mean, it seems like there's a lot of learnings on the technical side, but I also totally agree with Kim that for anyone listening, if you have a DApp, if you have a project, make sure that you set the right expectations from users, and maybe be clear in your email communication that you usually don't send them emails to approve transactions, sign messages without first logging into your account on the main website. So going back to Kim's point, I think this is also a learning from everyone that to avoid phishing, it's really good practice to train users to not have to take very common phishing attack vectors, such as clicking on something in an email. Awesome.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And sorry, the last thing I want to say is,
yeah,
if you're an app developer and you are thinking about the security of your application in any regard, whether it's on-chain or off-chain or logins or emails, please always feel free to reach out to our team. We're happy to give you advice on how to do things securely and talk about the best practices. And if you have particularly interesting use cases that might push the boundaries of what's possible, that's definitely something we would love to talk about with you and make sure that you can do it securely, because at this point in time, we want every application on Flow to give users the best possible experience, and that means a secure experience. So we're always here to help, always available.
Absolutely. And Pete, I liked your billion-dollar business, or actually probably it's going to be a trillion-dollar business idea of having on-chain email. So like Flow Mail, where every message is signed by the account. Maybe that's an idea that someone listening can work on. So yeah, cool. We got another question regarding the Black History Month token grant. What are the criteria for partnering? I don't know if anyone here is directly connected to the Black History Month token grant, but I can put you in contact with someone who is. So whoever asked the question, feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, I've got a DM going with that person, so we'll get them situated.
Okay, cool, awesome. Thank you. All right. Awesome. Then, considering that for the second half of this office hour, we wanted to turn it into like a dev tools brainstorming session, what I propose is, let's see who we have here. Yeah. So we won't use the SDKs and FCL breakout today. We're going to stay on this main chat to talk about the dev tools brainstorming. If you have pressing cadence questions, we do have Satyam who can, join in the cadence breakout. But if no one has any cadence questions, then feel free to stick around and we can all brainstorm it as a group. So Gregor, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah. So hi again. I'm part of the developer experience tool, developer experience team, where we try to make the whole local development experience as seamless as possible for you. And as part of this process is to know what problems are, and we've already opened channels for you to report those problems, one of them being issues on different repos or Discord actually, but maybe we can try another more like a dynamic session of brainstorming or problem discovery here. So let's see how this goes. Hopefully there's developers on this call that have problems or have ideas, and me, but also Pete and Mac, and not sure who else, probably Max is on the call, can brainstorm about it and come with some actions that we can improve on. So basically, whatever tool you're using for doing any development, and if you encounter some problems by using it, or some like gaps, share that with us now, or if you even have some ideas, feel free to share. Maybe we can talk. If there's nothing, maybe I can offer some ideas about what we can talk about. And yeah, that's a quick intro maybe. So anyone has any thoughts or something they want to share, or anything? Do we see the question board as well, or it's...
Sure. I can also start a poll if you want. What should the question be for the poll?
Yeah, if anyone is too shy to just unmute and talk, maybe just write any like problems you have with using the flow tools on the side.
Carol, you're typing
So
very
sorry.
loudly.
Sorry.
I was going to
Clicking
suggest.
clacks.
I was
complaining now.
I was going to suggest maybe to facilitate the discussion. Should we create? Okay, perfect. Okay, Carol, you're one step ahead of me. Awesome.
The clacking was for a reason.
Okay, so now we have an active poll, meaning that if you go to slido.com or sly.do and you type in this number, you can add any text, like any answer to this question, and they'll all appear here so that we can kind of work collaboratively, and they'll appear real time. So if anyone has any thoughts that they want to share, then of course you're welcome to unmute and talk about them. You don't have to use the poll, but if you want to just write it out, then that's your forum so that we can all see it. Thanks.
Hi, this is Casey. I thought I'd share a little bit of what I've experienced.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm actually still a pretty beginner dev going through Flow, and I don't know if this is more about the tools but I thought it'd be related. So when I was starting, and only a couple months ago, I found it was really easy to dive in to some of the beginner tutorials. Like I loved like the crypto dappy stuff was really cool. I also like the Flow Playground and the Cadence tutorials were really great. And the YouTube videos that accompanied them I thought were really great. And I got super excited and I was using those really well. And even like now when I'm using like the emulator and the dev wallet and stuff like that, I find those tools are great. But I found as a beginner, the one thing that I really struggled with was going from like the Flow Playground to using the dev like wallet and the emulator and stuff. Like for example, when I started, I didn't even know the dev wallet was a thing. I didn't know that was around, and I was having a lot of trouble kind of just bridging the gap between, okay, now I know how to code some Cadence, I know how to kind of deploy a smart contract on the playground. Like how do I do that, with the emulator? And I know eventually, like when I dug deeper into the documentation, and these office hours have been super invaluable in helping me get across that. But when I was going through it, I definitely had trouble making that leap from the Flow Playground to the emulator, and like from some of those tutorials. So I don't know if that would help other people, just having a little bit of that bridge between those tutorials and kind of really getting into the emulator and wallet and stuff like that. So I've started like writing some blog posts about it to kind of document that a little bit. But yeah, I thought I'd just share that as the experience that I had going through as a beginner.
Ooh, I love that. I'm adding it so that we can keep track of all this, and
Cool.
Also show us your blog post.
Okay, sure, yeah.
This might be a great time to plug what Jacob is doing with the Emerald City Academy. I don't know if it goes that far as from the playground into full deployment, but I think Jacob's here if he wants to talk about the academy.
I think he's deafened.
Yeah, I think so too. Dang.
He missed his opportunity, but I can plug it for him. For anyone on here that is still a beginner and is looking for kind of like a self-paced but at the same time interactive boot camp, then make sure to check out Emerald Academy. I think he undeafened. Jacob, do you want to talk about Emerald Academy?
Sure. Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. So, Emerald Academy is basically just a series of flow like educational resources that are being produced by the Emerald City DAO. We actually have a boot camp going on right now that started on Monday, but you can really start whenever. There's no real time constraint. We just sort of set up like a 3-week program to sort of help you get going. But the resources are always going to be out there for available for you. And basically, the boot camp is just an introduction to Cadence. And the Flow blockchain and like the blockchain in general. So there's no prerequisites at all. We don't even require that you know anything about coding. You could literally have never coded in your life before. And you're like totally, free to join the bootcamp. And there's quests associated with it so that you could have like little assignments. And we also have live workshops twice a week. We actually had one last night with around 25 people. So it went really well and people are learning. So totally feel free to join. We'd love to have you. And you can, I'll link the Discord if you are interested in joining.
Awesome. And going back to Casey's point, Jacob, does the Emerald Academy Bootcamp also cover that bridge between going from the playground to going to local development?
Yeah, so what we're actually going to do is the first bootcamp we're doing is entirely on Cadence. It's an introduction to the Cadence, like smart contract language. The next bootcamp that we do is going to be all about FCL and tying like your local Cadence development to some actual working things in like your own dApp. So for bootcamp number 1, you can really expect that everything's going to be in the playground because it's all learning how to do Cadence stuff. But the next bootcamp is going to be like, I was seeing people were talking a little bit about like, the FCL new like REST API and running a script on mainnet. All that will be covered in the next bootcamp, which will probably be in a month or so.
Super cool. Awesome.
Can I, so maybe I have more questions. I want to go back and forth with you, Casey, a bit. I will share our thoughts on that, but first I want to hear yours. So if you would have like a magic wand that you can wave around and make this problem go away, how would that look for you?
That's a good question. I guess, and I'll be honest, like part of it was my lack of understanding of some fundamental blockchain concepts. I think, even these past couple of weeks, I've been diving more into even just like transactions and accounts and how accounts work on Flow and stuff like that. And I think some of that stuff, I think some of those core concepts, as I was kind of going through some of the tutorials, I didn't really dive deeper into to understand that. So for example, like with the dev wallet, like I kind of had this idea that like, oh, okay, I'm going to build a smart contract where only the account owner of that smart contract can mint some NFTs. And when I kind of went down that road, I was like, wait, hold on a second. How do I sign in as that like account holder in like a React app or something like that, right? So I think some of those core concepts I didn't think about, and that's what led me to the dev wallet ultimately. I was like, oh wait, now I have this problem where I have to now sign in as that owner of that contract to be able to mint NFTs. So there was part of it that like that, and I'll be honest, like again, the documentation that I did read was really good. Like when I went to like the Cadence documentation, sorry, not the Cadence documentation, the Flow CLI documentation, it was super good. But I think what it was after I finished like the Cadence Playground tutorial, at that point I was kind of like, where do I go now? Like I just didn't know where to go. And so what led me to all this stuff was just like, kind of clicking around on all the different like links in the flow documentation, eventually finding what I needed. And I think maybe what would have helped is something along the lines of like just like a where to go now page. And it's like, okay, now that you've done the flow tutorial, the Canadian Playground tutorial, now that you've done maybe the crypto DAPI side, now kind of here's what you need to do to get set up with kind of a local dev environment, like set up the emulator, set up the dev wallet. Here's, some of the core concepts that you need to understand. And maybe even taking stuff like the crypto DAPI stuff and the flow playground stuff and kind of like just tweaking that to be like, okay, now this is where you're going to deploy it on the flow emulator. Here's how you're going to hook up, your React app to use like the dev wallet, things like that. I think that's the part that I was missing. It's just a little bit of almost like a walkthrough guide of like, here's where to go next. Because I think what was really exciting is that once I got past that part, it's like, oh, now I can really see how I'm going to deploy this to the testnet and the mainnet. I had the vision after that, right? So I think that got me really excited after I kind of got over that hurdle.
Awesome. That was really helpful to hear. And on that topic, we had some discussions. So first of all, coming soon, the CLI will integrate more tools that you'll need for local development, which hopefully will make it easier to discover. Second of all, there's a restructure of the documentation page coming in the future. We will share more about that when we are there. So the guidance, like the document that would guide you through the whole process, that I believe that's a really great idea. Take you from just using Playground to local environment, then testnet and mainnet and all the things you need to learn as you go. That's really great. We've also done some. We briefly actually discussed a way for developers to have like an easy kind of like a migrate Playground project to emulator, which could be like an easy transition from Playground to the emulator. So that potentially can help. And yeah, the documentation structure is also really important. As you said, you needed to click around to figure it out, and that's not great. So yeah, just going back and forth. Hopefully that makes sense. So the next, should we address a next problem anyone had, or Casey, do you have anything else on that?
No, I think I'm pretty good. But yeah, thanks. That all sounds really, really good. And again, like I gotta kind of reiterate, like the stuff that I did find was awesome. And again, these office hours have like really helped me get over those hurdles. So
yeah, sure. Don't feel the need to sugarcoat anything, but yeah, we get. So is there another general problem like that you had while you were developing your dApps or starting, or even if it doesn't feel relevant, just share. I believe we can learn from anything you share with us.
Hey, Gregor, it's Chase. I was first off, shout out to Jacob. I also think he's making a lot of great content here. I was watching some of his YouTube videos, and there was one where he's trying to create an NFT contract from start to finish. And I noticed that he mentioned he does a lot of his development in the Playground. And Jacob, correct me if I'm wrong here, kind of going off memory of watching the video. And there was a part where you were copy pasting some like kind of core contracts around like NFTs into the Playground to develop. And I was wondering, that process, if that's your normal process, if other people do it, and if, say, the ability to like import some of these contracts directly in there with some sort of like button or something, maybe a search without having to, go to GitHub, copy it, pick out what you want, hope that you pasted it in right, would be something that would probably be like helpful and useful in that sort of development process. Kind of curious to hear about that.
Oh yeah, yeah, that would definitely be helpful. The people that I know and that I've taught that have used the Flow Playground, we always go to like the GitHub repo and copy it in. So some sort of button that could directly import it, because I think that there is something to say about like it might not be the best solution to just like have it behind the scenes, because then you can't actually see the contract. I think if you're developing local development, like seeing the contract, it's like the contract code itself is really helpful. So if there's some way to like auto import it and then have it like appear, would be like super, super helpful.
Oh yeah, I mean that doesn't seem like it would be that hard either. I don't know, Gregor, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for the playground part, that totally makes sense. For the local development part, I'm not sure. So can you share a bit more on how do you see that as like contracts being imported into emulator? Yeah, maybe just I didn't really got what you meant.
Yeah, I think he's focused more on the playground, and I'll share this video too in the chat that kind of shows his process in developing. But yeah, I don't know, Jacob, if you had any more thoughts on it.
Yeah, that was mostly it. It was only like it's sort of like when you're developing, your NFT contract, it just is always helpful to have that contract there, and you need it to like, test it out so that you can have your contract in like import it before you start like going to test it and stuff like that. So that's why I like, at least I personally think it would just be helpful to have in there. And like the other very common ones are like flow token, fungible token. Those are the ones off the top of my head.
I think we once had the idea, and we're seriously considering having the emulator read the flow JSON. So you sort of set up your flow JSON with whatever contracts you need, and then when you start the emulator, it just deploys them automatically. So it's not necessarily that those contracts are included with the emulator, but you can easily sort of specify them. And I think we also talked about letting you sort of add contracts programmatically from the CLI using a command. So you like sort of like an npm install or something like that. If we can surface those, I even think we created issues for those in this CLI repo. I'll try to find those and see if we can move the discussion there, because I think this is a good idea as well.
Yeah, for sure. So emulator comes with this contract flag that just offers like a predefined contracts that gets deployed, and this idea of like having a way to specify more contracts that gets deployed on the startup, yeah, that's great. And to some extent, the deploy section of the flow JSON, you have an ability to specify contracts you want to deploy, then like have a better functionality of adding those contracts to flow JSON. That would be nice for sure. And yeah, we should visit those. So interestingly, there's also the idea, both pieces of feedback kind of touch the idea of like transitioning from somewhere to somewhere. So whether that be from playground to local environment, or even like the source code to deployed code, and that's interesting. So does anyone else have any other problems or feedback that want to share?
While people are thinking, it's also interesting that the other piece of feedback that came in, which is need more walkthroughs for deploying to testnet, is also a transition, right? Going from local to testnet. So it seems like we just need to do a good job of helping people along the different phases, because in the specific phase there may be good documentation, but
Sorry to interrupt for a sec, but some of these topics I'm noticing that I actually like have covered like in the YouTube series or some written content, and maybe it might be helpful to like have like I'm not saying it has to, the content has to be coming from me necessarily. I mean, of course, it'd be coming from anybody, but if we could have some like maybe sheet of like topics that are covered so that we can point people to these like explanations or tutorials, because oftentimes like there's a lot of the same question, and it's like helpful to be like, oh, like you wanted to play a contract on testnet, like boom, there you go, or like some other thing, and like I said, like that could be coming from anyone, not just myself.
Yeah, I think it's a good point that I assume that now I'm in the emulator phase, that the transition to testnet would be smooth, but now hearing what you guys are saying, yeah, I think it's really just those different phases you go from a beginner, blockchain developer to, hey, you played the tutorials, and now it's like, oh, sweet. The next stage is the, using emulator local dev environment. Next stage is testnet. And next, I just started reading recently some of the flow documentation about, going to mainnet and the whole review process and stuff like that, right? So it's kind of like, what are the like key differences, like when you go to this new phase of your development journey, right? And I'm sure once you've gone through it once from beginner all the way to production, now you've kind of sorted all that out. But yeah, for kind of newcomers, I think it's just those transition points where it's like, oh, now that you've done this, here are the new things that you need to know for local development. Here are the new things that you need to know for testnet deployment. Here are the things that you need to know for mainnet development.
Yeah, that sounds great. I really like this concept of that we started the conversation around like this flow journey and how each phase actually has this action on like almost like when you play a game and at the end of each level you have that like level boss that you need to defeat to to get to the next level. So yeah, we shouldn't have those. And the transition should be easier. Have 1 more minute. So if anyone has last thoughts, jump in. But I promise we will repeat this again soon.
So just really quick, I wanted to sneak in an announcement. The NFT storefront contract, which many people in the community use, is going to be updated. It's in theory a non-breaking change. However, consumers of the events emitted by that contract should be updated. There are a couple of new fields being added. I'll paste a link to the pull request. The pull request includes adding the NFT ID and type to the listing completed event, which should be helpful in being able to discern your events from everybody else's.
Thanks, Albert. And last, I know that we're out of time, but super last quick announcement, and maybe we can dedicate a bit more time in the next office hour to this as well. Flowverse just released both a one-pager and a 19-pager of a guide to Flow if you're an Ethereum dev or Ethereum user. So kind of going through everything that you're used to in Ethereum and what the corresponding alternative is in Flow, how things work. So definitely check it out. You can find it on their Twitter. So if you go to twitter.com/Flowverse, you can find them and give them a read, especially if you're part of the Ethereum community. And share them, of course.
I think we should go through this one next time, actually.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
We can dedicate it pretty much. I think we can dedicate it on it.
Yeah. I just don't want to like rush through it and and then kind of take it for done. So I just want to tease it so people can start reading, and then we can dedicate a bit of time in the next office hours to go through it. Definitely.
I can put it on the agenda for next time and we'll do a deep dive on it.
Awesome.
Yay.
All right. Well, in that case, I think we can close our office hours here. Yeah, also want to mention that our hearts go out to our Ukrainian friends for sure. I hope everyone's safe if you're listening from there, although I imagine you have other things to think about right now. And yeah, see you in the next office hours next week. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks all. Take care.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye. Party on, party people.
Bye.
It's gonna open faster. Oh, my mic's on.